Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Mr. Anthony Albanese, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, buddy?
So happy that we're catching you on a Tuesday, because in Anthony's life, for those not listening or not viewing, only listening, you're missing Bow Tie Tuesday. Bow Tie Tuesday. And that's kind of funny. It's so fitting that we're recording on a Tuesday, because back in the day, you and I, do you remember our first connection? The first words we exchanged, what were they?
First words. You're gonna have to remind me. I remember the first day, but I don't remember the first words.
It's kind of funny that I remember this, but we were a part of the Downtown Denver Partnerships Leadership Development Program in 2013. And so imagine 90 people in that room, remember? And you were in the room somewhere, I was in the room somewhere. We took a break, and in the bathroom, everyone's kind of taking a bio break, and we're like washing our hands next to each other. And you said something to me. You remember now, by chance?
Gotta
You
remember.
go, I could have sworn you were mic'd up, man. How are you? I could have sworn you were mic'd up. Are you mic'd up? And I said, no, I'm not mic'd up. What do you mean? What do you mean? And you're like, your voice sounds like you're mic'd up over there. And I just appreciated that so much. And for the longest time, I thought you wore bow ties exclusively. But it just so happens that on Tuesdays, as a commercial real estate professional, that's part of your brand. So
It's my brand. 16 years strong.
16 years strong.
Every Tuesday and only on Tuesdays. So sometimes known as the bow tie guy, and I'm like, you only ever see me on Tuesdays.
That's beautiful. Well, you're looking good with the American flag bow tie a day after Memorial Day. Yeah, I think that program set us on a trajectory together. We've had, who are some of the key philosophical characters that you feel like have brought an affinity between the two of us over the years? What would you say?
Well, going way back, we talked some Socrates and Plato. It's kind of a lot of my foundational beliefs. So people that are around me a lot are like, oh God, here he goes, Socrates again. And then, yeah, I don't know we ever really got into modern history, modern philosophy, but Ayn Rand, I think we've talked about a little bit. Yeah, some other ones I'm not thinking of.
No doubt, but we've like dissected the world a number of times over oysters and happy hours and
Yeah.
coffees and whatnot. And I just appreciate always waxing philosophical with you and trying to sort out the puzzle of making the best out of this great life. And now your day to day, your forte is commercial real estate.
Yeah.
You're based out of Denver, but I know historically you've served clients all over the country, all over the world. So what's the average? What's a grand day in the life of Anthony look like these days?
Generally it's say it averages about a 60-hour work week, which is tough to balance with 4 kids. Traveling less, I think, with being more selective on my travel when I have to go somewhere, just to not put the pressure at home. And then, but yeah, generally kind of get up fairly early, try to help out a little bit with the kids to get them out the door, get going on some emails and calls, and still coming into the office. As you see, I think separation between the house and the home is good for me and my team. So usually here till 6:30 and get home, try to make it home for dinner, and get the kids in the bathtub and to bed, and do it all again the next day. So
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it?
And I think my comment on you being mic'd up is just I'm generally pretty soft spoken, so I'm constantly, having to work on speaking louder. And so I was so impressed that you just carried the whole room and just had such a great presence and such a great, vocal cords on you. I was impressed on that first day. I said, I got to know this guy.
Oh man, that's crazy. Yeah, what was that? 2013. So here we are, 11 years later.
Yeah.
I know this is a fatherhood podcast, and that's where I want to really direct everything. But being that you're seeing the world from a pretty, commercial real estate seems to have kind of a macro perspective on where our society is at, the appetite for going into work, and I just see, executive teams stewarding their workforce. It's kind of, I don't know, I hope it's not parenting exactly, but it is a bit of a, you have to motivate, you have to compel, you have to support and create a safe environment. So what the quick assessment of the commercial real estate land, what's your sense of it right now? What are people, what are the trends, and what does it tell us about, people's attitudes on the world?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm very lucky. I've got a pretty unique purview of working with companies on the real estate they occupy. So a lot of that is office, but also some industrial and some other components. Just uh, companies, businesses have a lot of different real estate needs. So get to see across a very wide spectrum of different industries and approaches. It is ultimately the office, really pre-pandemic and really starting to show up again. It's about culture, right? It's kind of think about, we can work out at home on our own, and that can work and we can do well. If you go into a gym and you see other people working hard, you kind of get a little extra motivation. If you get a personal trainer, which is kind of your manager equivalent, that's good. You work out even harder. So a lot of companies kind of over the last few years started out super skeptical. Our office has been hoteling since 2016 and been working with companies that, certain job functions are better off remote. Some should be hybrid for almost a decade now. And very few adopters in the early days. Obviously, that pendulum kind of swung all the way to remote, forced to do so throughout the pandemic. And, so a lot of companies went in very skeptical, then became very comfortable with it. And then ultimately, where fast forward, hard to believe 4 years later, there has been a number of companies that have experienced very kind of cultural erosions and seeing a lot of siloed work being done without a lot of connectivity across the office. And ultimately, if you look at it, it's really kind of early stage companies and publicly traded companies are really the ones that have been pressing harder for return to office and have put in those types of mandates. And they see that remote employees tend to turn over at a much higher rate than hybrid or in-office employees. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, it just comes down to a lot of people don't really enjoy the work they do. They enjoy the people that they're around and the camaraderie and the repetition. So if it's, I'm going to pay you $1,000 more or $5,000 more and ship you a new laptop, you're much more reticent to hop ship and do work that you're not overly enthusiastic about for somebody else that's going to pay you a little bit more. So it's a much more transient workforce. And so with that, a lot of companies are really in 24 this year starting to call people back with, at least 3 day a week kind of requirements. And really a lot of them are planning to go to 4 days a week, by the end of the year. And that's really where I saw all this settling from the beginning, because the pendulum kind of swung a bit too far in terms of remote and that connectivity and that working together. There's a lot of efficiency in that when we're doing it together, and when we're also stepping outside of the written word, right? So when you're communicating via Slack or text or emails, going back to our Plato conversations, he says the problem with the written word is it's left up to the interpretation of the reader. And so something that you thought might be motivating in a text or an email could be heartbreaking to somebody because they're not understanding the context that you're delivering it in. And so you see that kind of add up over time. But
Yeah, it's a good perspective. And then you're also in a board position within Dura. You're the board chair, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
I was chair the prior 2 years that ended in April. So just recently rolled off as chair, and yes, on the Denver Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners. So was appointed by the mayor back in 2015. So I'm serving my second 5-year term. At 32, the first 5-year term sounded like a life sentence. So being near the end of my second one is hard to believe.
Amazing. Congrats on that.
Yeah,
And between those two things, just creating, helping your clients create environments where people can thrive and feel a sense of belonging, and where there's skill sets coming to life, and as you said, camaraderie and so forth. And then essentially that's what Dura's doing indirectly or directly, is creating a place around Denver where it's a happy, healthy, safe, productive environment. So
yeah,
I can't imagine you would argue that that's almost what fatherhood is. Would you say? I mean, what are the correlations?
absolutely.
The spirit, right? The spirit of it is similar, if not strikingly the same.
Absolutely. There's so much I've learned from my kids, right? So uh, my industry had historically kind of been yell at someone long enough and pound your fist on the table hard enough, and ultimately you may get what you want. It's morphed a lot. You have to use it's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of logic that you have to apply on why certain things need to be a certain way. And my relationship with my kids, and really kind of the way that my wife is just absolutely amazing, and really set on trying to make us parents that do things kind of differently than the way we were brought up. And a lot of my upbringing, I had amazing parents, very loving, but it was very short, get over it. This is the way it is type of parenting versus hearing your kids out, talking them through something. And I remember one time I was getting my second daughter in the bathtub, and at 3 years old, uh, she was a little bit behind in terms of her verbal communication. So that ended up with a lot of temper tantrums. Just she would get really frustrated about not being able to communicate what she wanted. And I remember I was trying to get her into the bathtub, and she's just screaming in my face, just nonstop screaming as loud as she can in my face. And I had a moment where my anxiety went up. I wanted to yell back and say, "Get in the tub," and just get it over with. And I just took a deep breath, and I realized, like, I can't let this 3-year-old who's going through a lot of development of her own dictate my reaction. And that has carried over. I remember that day very clearly, and that moment very clearly, into my work life, where someone might be upset, screaming on the phone, trying to get their way. And I realized I just have to kind of let it out, let them calm down a little bit, hear what they're trying to actually achieve, and then move on. So,
No doubt. I remember thinking, in a relationship with your partner or maybe your kiddos, you want to be the rock. You want to be that, but that feels like the wrong analogy, actually. The lighthouse in the storm is you don't want to be a rock in their storm. That's just going to cause, even bigger problems potentially. But can you be a lighthouse and just patient, reveal, the world to them, and create some safety for them? It's funny how, you and I both, we were in that leadership development program. Leadership is in our roles and our duties, our responsibilities, our commitments to people. And I just see this role of fatherhood is correlated to leadership so blatantly. It's crazy. All these, guiding humans, whether they're little or they're grown up,
mhm.
and they're self-sufficient. It's all very similar. It's all very similar.
100%. Yeah, that's one of the things I've learned, and a friend of mine kind of gave me this advice, but it's also come from some different readings and whatnot. But our children are a great experiment in and of themselves, right? Like they're learning constantly, and for us to put our expectations of, for me, 41 years of knowledge and life experience, and expect them to do things the way that I've interpreted the world and how to do it and know better, is not fair to them, right? It's something that they're going and experiencing these things for the first time, and they need to, and they really looking at, just like you said, my job is to help keep some guardrails on while still giving enough autonomy to figure things out. And for me to expect otherwise, it could be detrimental to them and their experience of trying and failing and learning why certain things are done a certain way. And I was certainly a kid that always learned through experience as opposed to being told. So I had to touch the flame to realize, okay, this is why you don't touch a flame, and it's something that, I can proudly say many years later, I don't touch flames anymore, but I had to do it. I had to do it starting out. And I think that's with our kids, if we kind of think about their journey and their need to try and fail, and get rid of our own expectations of you should just know better. That's a big component to it.
Yeah, it's tough to operate and live in theory. Like, don't touch the hot thing. It's theoretically hot. You got to know what hot means. We
Yeah, I
need
know
the
what that means.
firsthand experience, don't we? So you as we were warming things up for this podcast, you said something that struck me, a unique place that you find yourself in as a father. For those listening, I want you to maybe just share your, the impact of this dynamic on your heart, how it has you thinking about being a great parent, a great father. But you've got four kiddos straddling the spectrum of their youth. So you've got 4.5-year-olds and a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old in between, and your 12-year-old's right on the brink of greater independence, some sovereignty, some experimentation out in the world, wandering around on her own. It's like, what's that like? How are you processing it, and what are you doing about it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I look at it as a true gift to kind of have both ends of the spectrum right now. It's allowed me to recognize how far my 12-year-old has come, and simultaneously with the twins appreciate where they're at and where they will ultimately end up. Because as a new parent, right, you're experiencing all this stuff for the first time yourself, and you're kind of questioning, okay, if there's a lot of temper tantrums at 3 years old, like how is this kid gonna turn out? Is this who they are forever? And you see that evolution in them, and that there are really just moments in time as their brains developing, where they're wildly different. There's some underlying things that are the same, and so that appreciation for kind of both ends of the spectrum is really front and center at the moment for me. Last about this time last year, I looked at my wife and I said, things can't get any, they're getting better. They're going to get better from here because they can't get any worse. And it really had to do with just having twin 3-year-olds that were, when they would get into a temper tantrum, it just became a competition of like, who's going to get the loudest. And like my Apple Watch would constantly go off and be like, if you stay at this noise level for any longer, you're going deaf, and and it would go on for an hour. And so they turned 4 in November, and the twins were born over midnight. They have my son AJ was born on the 6th. My daughter Sloan was born on the 7th, and my oldest daughter Charlie is November 8th. So we got 3 birthdays in a row. So she turned 12 right when they turned 4, and so when they turned 4, it was literally like a light switch went off and their temper tantrums lessened. And and then about a month later, we had this nice little lull. And then Charlie, my 12-year-old, had her first kind of preteen meltdown, first and only thus far, knock on wood. But I was just like, oh God, we're entering another phase. But with that, there's a really great book for raising young girls, and it's called Untangled. And that was super helpful for me, and also kind of understanding that um, need for them to start creating separation, and them doing it in the safety of your home is very important, and allowing them to start to grow into an adult while they're in the safety of your home, as opposed to trying to suffocate that need and have them go out into the world at 18 years old and start to figure it out for the first time in college. How important that is. And so, that's really where we're at with Charlie is we're rolling into summertime. We're trying to figure out, how loose of a leash do we give her? What types of things can she do independently, or with a couple of friends? And it's in today's society, it's tough to just be like, all right, go out. We live very close to downtown, so very urban neighborhood, and it's tough to just be like, hey, go to the park, go to the store, whatever, grab something with your friends, go to the pool. Um, your guard's a little bit more up, but at the same time, it's so critical to their development and that feeling of independence and that understanding that they can do things on their own and be okay. It's That's our new evolution as parents right now. We're just entering that and really having to understand the long-term benefit while getting over our short-term fears.
How are you and your wife? What does it sound like to talk through this approach? What considerations are you balancing? What's your, are you both in agreement on everything, or is there a little tussle? I mean, in a healthy way, but just curious what it sounds like to sort through the parenting determinations here.
Yeah. I'm one of five, so my upbringing was very laissez-faire and kind of fend for yourself in a lot of ways, and figuring a lot of things out on my own. So if left up to my own devices, my kids would be wandering around at probably 5 years old. So I think just getting to this point has been a little bit longer than I personally, would have done on my own parenting. But at the same time, like I said, I have the utmost respect for my wife and her way of parenting. And so, it is just something where it's kind of like, all right, it's time, it's time. She's capable. We've got a tracking device on her, which is the Apple Watch. You can see where she's at. She can call us if she needs to. Um, so at some point you just gotta let them spread their wings and fly. And so that's it's kind of where we're at. So, but I'd say generally we're coming up to this moment, like we're very much on the same page that this is the right time to start having those experiences. So
Yeah, it's got to be. I'm just trying to think about what would it actually feel like to, raise your kiddo and then at a certain point just trust that they'll figure it out.
yeah,
That happens to all of us, I suppose, as parents, and it's going to be a while before I have to face that. Um, and so I have this question on like, what is your philosophy on fatherhood? You answered part of it like pretty laissez-faire, like just let it roll if it was just you. But that you there's more to it, I suppose. What is your philosophy on fatherhood? Like, how did you think about just trying to picture Anthony Albanese on, uh, it's like a week or two before, 12 years and 2 weeks ago or whatever it would be. How were you thinking about what it meant to be a father? What was going to be your your key approach? What was your philosophy, and then how has it evolved over time?
Yeah. Yeah. Going pre-kids, I definitely, it's interesting because I say laissez-faire in terms of them experiencing things. However, I'm very much on like, I was very tight on guardrails, right? Again, too short of a fuse if it in that learning experience and that understanding that their brain isn't the same as my brain or any adult's brain, that they've got a lot going on in there that's not fully formed and not functioning, right? And it needs to go through different iterations to form. And so starting out, it's kind of like, go play in the yard, go keep yourself busy, like that kind of laissez-faire, where it's like, I'm not going to entertain you all the time. You've got to find joy in what you're doing on your own to a degree. And so while simultaneously, still doing things with them on at other occasions, but being okay with boredom, and figuring out how to keep yourself busy. Um, and I still am, that part is maintained, evolving 12 years of parenting, my appreciation for their journey, their mental development, their need to mess up, and yes, it might disrupt my life and make things more difficult for me in terms of the last thing you want to do, at the end of a day is like clean up a big mess that, a big spill happened or something broke or you're cleaning up glass and, but just understanding it's a part of the process and being okay with it to a degree if it's not something that's been a repetitive behavior of that you've tried to course correct and it hasn't gotten corrected yet. So
Just thinking about the function you play or the mindset you bring to some of your client work, it's constantly assessing, costs and benefits, risks and opportunities. And I just wonder when you're thinking about the landscape of children getting raised in our current world, what is on your mind as a philosophical minded guy and kind of thinking, I know I can imagine what you want for your kids. You want them to thrive. Um, you want them to be self-sufficient and yet collaborative and all these, likely things. But what is your assessment of the current landscape? Pitfalls for those listening, for me as a new dad, like what is there to be on the lookout for
yeah,
that is a sincere concern or worry, and how are you managing those factors? And you gave one example, proximity to downtown and perhaps, a little bit more vulnerability in that neck of the woods versus a rural setting, whatever. What else is out there that's on your mind?
yeah. Um, yeah, the world's changing at a rapid pace, right? And there's no shortage of examples of that. So you're never going to be able to prescribe a future for your children in this environment, right? So like do these steps and it's going to work out. And so what's kind of front and center and going back 12 years when we decided we wanted to have kids, one thing I wanted to make sure uh, my kids were grounded in was their personal principles, right? And what's important to them, um, how to just have a foundational core that doesn't ever change. It doesn't matter what the exterior environment is, they have something built into them that they can fall back on. And, so I'm known as the truth fairy in my house, right? I don't tell my kids lies. It doesn't matter how awkward or, they're like, you're mean. I'm like, the truth is not mean or nice. It's just the truth, right? And so there's certain things like that I try to instill in them, because ultimately I think what's going to be really important for our kids is being adaptable, and being adaptable to and resilient. Things are going to change. Jobs that existed will no longer exist. There are just going to be a number of things that come up in their life that if they don't have a foundational core and they don't have the resolve to look for the next thing when a door is shut, that would be a failure to me as a father. And so those are really the things that I try to instill in them, and critical thinking, constantly letting them question why things are the way they are, why any aspect, no topic is off the table in our household. Just we're constantly, question after question and answer and question back, and trying to let them explore and get feedback and make determinations. And so those are the things, that I think are my job as a father, is that foundational core, the critical thinking. And the piece that I'm not totally sure how to build in is just that grit and resolve. I grew up super poor, and so it was easy for me to have grit because, you can choose to stay in that environment, or you can choose to do something different. And it's something that as you become a good provider and give your kids all these different experiences, it's a lot of my friends that came from similar upbringings that have had relatively successful careers. We all have that same concern. How do we build in that resolve in our kids that they're going to go find their purpose? And there's different ways I think you can do that. We're going to explore really with my 12-year-old if any of them work. But and certainly having them have some skin in the game on their own personal rewards in terms of earning and achieving and contributing to things that they want, are all kind of built in there. So that's the only way I can make sense of how to help them out in a landscape that I have no clue what it looks like in 20 years, when they're entering the workforce, and my oldest daughter in 10 years, what's it going to look like then? I don't know. So
yeah, grit is the product of doing hard things. And sometimes you have to consciously, voluntarily go do hard things, and sometimes you're raised in a hard place. So
yeah,
it's like you don't want them to be raised in a hard place, and they're in the good fortune of your efforts. But what are the hard things in the next 10 years your daughter's gonna find herself, or that you can help her embrace, so that she's got that grit? Because I feel like tenacity, grit, resolve, resilience, all that kind of stuff is is conceptually and poetically so important. And then what is the reality of how do you practically bestow that upon them? I don't know. Just hard things, showing them hard things and letting them triumph and fail, but triumph ultimately. It's interesting. I just want to unpack what you said about giving them a self or a sense of self, and helping them establish principles and values, so that no matter what the world throws at them, they'll have kind of that guiding spirit of, a bit of a North Star, so to speak. And I find that similar to, no matter who you are right now as an adult, the world has yanked us all over the place in the last 4 years in a lot of ways, in terms of how we work and how we structure our society, politics, everything. It's like, if you don't, you can't really be adaptable without principles. You can't, if things externally change and you don't have principles, you're just getting drug places. But if you have principles, you now have context, and you're making a compromise with external forces and what you want. So you're actually, there's some agency in there. And I just wonder how much of our world really has principles right now. It's like everyone is just getting tempted, teased, manipulated, pulled in all these different directions. And I don't sense that it's in combination with a deep sense of self and a deep sense of principles. It seems like it's a little messy.
yeah. So the ancient Greeks had two words for happiness. One was eudaimonium, which meant true happiness, and that true happiness also meant seeking out truth and justice. And the other was uh, the release of pain. And so if you think about the way that our society approaches happiness right now, it's the release of pain. Can't wait to go on the next vacation. I can't, whether it's cigarettes or alcohol, all you're doing really is releasing a moment of pain while you're doing that thing. And you're not actually experiencing happiness. You're just experiencing a lack of pain for a moment. And so I fully feel we've fallen into that version of happiness, which isn't true happiness. And that is, again, what I try to help my kids focus on is great relationships that are built on foundational truths. Always telling the truth and building these camaraderies that can endure the test of time because you're a good person to your friend. You're there to help them. You're good sibling. And these are the people that are always going to be around you and help protect you and help guide you through life. Those are the things I try to instill in my kids because when you look back at life, you realize eudaimonium is the true happiness. It's always the hardest things we overcome that we look back on the most fondly. And very rarely do you remember a vacation unless it was something extraordinary, right? Or a big client deal getting done. Like those things are great in the moment, but ultimately that's not what you look back on your life and say, that's what I'm super proud of. It was the difficult things that you overcame and persevered that you say, that's at my core. I still smile about it to this day, right?
And all those connections that you've built,
Those
even
great
if it's
friends.
only a small handful, the depth of them,
Yeah.
the quality of them.
Yeah.
So get get with me on this idea. It's like if you're a little ahead of me, but you've got a 4.5-year-old. You're not that far ahead of me on that front, but the 12-year-old's up quite a bit. But all the different dads that might be listening to this, and really what I've realized this podcast is becoming is a sense of it's a place where people can kind of find their fellow fatherhood tribe and try to figure out how to make the most of the puzzle. If we as fathers if we have as fathers want to raise kiddos that one day can uh, heal the country or the world and not just get by but help the the community, maybe a micro community or the community, the world community at large, to thrive and to work together, to collaborate, to truly have a sense of positivity in our country and beyond. What is there for us to do? You've touched on a few different things, but if you were to like zoom out and imagine you're in front of a group of 20 dads, you're like, guys, I've thought about this, and I know you haven't, it's off the cuff, but bear with me. There's these three big ideas that if we all embrace them or channel them, I think we have a really good chance at healing the world. What do we want to give our kids so they have the best chance to heal the world?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Ayn Rand and individualism, and it's kind of counterintuitive to your question in terms of helping community. But I think a big part of what we have lost in society is that individualism isn't hedonism, right? They're two different things. If you're really well understanding of yourself, individual, you recognize the importance of community. You recognize that it's not just about me. If I help those around me, my life is actually better off. And if you go down to the individual motivation factor, which is where I think a lot of almost all of our decisions are made, it starts with being a strong individual. And so understanding yourself for first then leads to understanding the needs of others around you. And it's not a simple cure-all that happens overnight and in a quick way, but if we can raise a generation of kids that truly understand the value of individualism and how to do that with respect and camaraderie, um, that's how, in my mind, it all changes. If we're looking at our individual communities and everyone's taking that responsibility on, and seeing how they can help their neighbor, knowing that one day they may be in the same situation or they're creating a safer environment to raise to for their own life and to raise their own family. And if everyone started to take that approach, uh, I think that's what it takes to kind of cure where we're at in the world, right? And so it's just it comes down to individual responsibility being the core foundation of our societies. And I firmly believe that that's what it takes. But
No, you're right. And yet some people hear individualism these days, it's kind of a spicy word, and it means to be selfish in some interpretations. It's like not that's in order to be able to actually give to our community, you have to be self-sufficient. If all I'm doing is taking because I need, because I can't, I need others to kind of complete my identity or to complete my needs. If 100% of the world operated that way, there would be no one to actually help those who need it because everyone would need it. So it's almost like this 90-10 rule or some sort. Of course, there's going to be people out there that uh, can't be that can't take on individual responsibility for various reasons. But if that should be the exception, and then the majority of people, to be self-sufficient, to be, self-reliant, that doesn't mean you're not in a communal mindset,
Mhm.
but it means that you can add value and add more value than you're consuming and create, surplus goodness in the world. And I don't feel like it works otherwise. It's almost like a mathematical equation that the integrity of the individual has to be high for then the community to thrive and for others who do have needs, for those needs to be met by others, right? And
100%. Yeah.
so the individualism or individual responsibility, personal responsibility, that's one thing that's going to heal the world. Any other key aspects that you feel like we could, if we all leaned in a little bit to, you know, creating personal responsibility in our kiddos, that's going to be that's going to be a nice touch. That's not a thumbs down. That was a thumbs up. What a weird emoji. But in any other aspect or any other realm, do you see there being like a core tenet that
Yeah,
we
it's
can
again, I
foster?
think going back to that understanding of what true happiness is, right? I don't think we live in a world that's constantly lying to us. And I think if we go back to understanding the value of truth and what that brings to our relationships, our lives, and being able to operate in a logical manner, um, I think that's really fundamentally what's missing from our country right now. There's a lot of uh, rewriting history, rewriting all different types of things. And so we go back to this understanding that a truth does exist and we can make decisions based off of those truths. We'll be a lot better off as well. So,
And sometimes the truth eludes us, and it's the healthy discourse between two people, two parties, two perspectives that help us unpack and reveal the truth, and that's stifled right now.
yeah,
That's not allowed, or
absolutely.
it's difficult to engage in discourse in a way that's going to yield truth.
Well,
What,
and
what,
you're not totally positive that the people you're electing or engaging in conversation with or even intend to get to the truth, right? Like
mm,
that's fundamentally wrong. And so you can't enter a debate with someone who's not trying to get to the truth. You
mm,
can't solve real problems with people who aren't trying to get to the truth. And I feel that's why I am the truth fairy in my house, because I just feel they need a place where, to the extent my knowledge knows and what I don't know, I'd let them know I don't know. I need to look into this further. We need to have further discussion on this. Those are all important things. I'm not a person that remotely thinks I know everything in the world. But knowing that, like, that's what we're trying to get to, we're going to put ourselves towards the best target, right?
So individual responsibility, truth, and let's go for three. What's the
Yeah,
third?
I mean, again, I find the individual responsibility part and parcel with this, but if we had to separate it, it is that understanding of community, right? It's because that understanding of community also allows people. I think we're also suffering from a lack of purpose. Like, we've had multiple generations of economic prosperity, so things have come easy, and people have this expectation of just I should be on perma vacation and not have to do anything. And what you actually find is that doesn't create any sense of purpose. And when you have that understanding of community and how you fit into that community and what value you're bringing to it via your work, your role as a great partner and raising great kids, whatever it is that you're doing to contribute into this broader community, actually gives you a lot of fulfillment. I think it's the basis for fulfillment. And so, if we had to separate it out, I put that as part of my definition of individualism. But if we had to separate it out, I think it's understanding that individual role within the broader community and how to propel it forward.
How to add value, be a part of things. It's funny that you say perma vacation. Like, imagine 500 years ago when we were ruled by, the world was ruled by conquerors and kings and monarchies. And it's like, there was no such thing as vacation. There was zilch when it came to vacation. There was, do what you do and provide goods and services to the elites because they're the ones on vacation. The concept of vacation for the average human 500 years ago was null and void. There was no such thing. And here we are in this society where opulence is everywhere. The ability to have control over your own destiny and a lot more sovereignty is much more available. And you almost go, well, it's beautiful, but there's a catch-22 behind that. And now we're complacent and there's apathy everywhere and entitlement. And it's like, how do we unpack all this? It's
There's,
pretty.
I'm going to butcher this, but 7 stages to empires, right? And effectively towards the tail end, it comes off of, a fight for independence, then, and then that basis of understanding the fight and the opportunity ahead leads to this economic boom. Then you kind of get into this maturation phase where you've had that economic boom and things become a little bit too easy. And ultimately you start entering into decline because there's other competing interests around the globe that say, if you're not going to keep that spot, we'll take it. And we see our opportunity to pull ourselves in a better direction. And it's not that we don't have to live in a, monopolar world where there's one great outcome, right? But we also can continue our way of life without people understanding that comes off of hard work and contributing back to their broader community to allow it to continue to thrive in the way that it has. And so, that's something that I think when your basic needs are all taken care of, and you're trying to figure out what's next, the mind wants to wander into a absence of any responsibility is what freedom is, right? And I think it's one of those things, again, that's great in theory, but the way that we actually find ourselves wired is that leads to a lot of anxiety because we're meant as creatures to be productive, and we're meant to be engaged and pushing things forward.
So is freedom the absence of responsibility? No, it's the ability to, I mean, what is freedom then? The ability to be productive, uh, like having the self-confidence and the resourcefulness to be productive at all times or something. What is freedom if it's not the absence of
It's
responsibility?
it's choosing your lane of productivity, right? It's, again, it could be you've worked really hard and you've earned the right to be a retired great a grandfather who's super involved in helping to foster that next generation with your grandkids. Like, it's the ability to choose your lane of productivity.
Hmm.
And so it's not the absence of having to do anything.
Yes. So freedom is sovereignty to be productive, to be generative, to be creative, to be value add in your own lane. It's a
In
good
my mind.
distinction there. What's that? Say that
In
again.
my mind,
Yeah.
in my definition. So
Yeah, no, fair. I mean, maybe there's a more, I don't know. We'll get some commentary from our listeners. What do you think freedom really is, right? So you and I have been really playing out, these macro external factors and how we navigate them, or how we help our kiddos navigate them to become, great kiddos. But I know that your story, your personal journey as a father, you had some adversity, some challenges, and you you navigated something that it wasn't, although it wasn't you, it was with your wife. It wasn't external macro, it was micro. So can you give me a little bit of an assessment of how you approached being the partner to your wife as she navigated this? And then how did that affect how you thought of fatherhood and how you maybe handled fatherhood?
yeah. Um, so the story Dave's referring to is December of 2015. At 32 years old, my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, and so we had a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old at that point. And um, wife had to go through chemo, double mastectomy, really, really rough time period in our life, where um, she was the nucleus of our family in terms of taking care of our kids. Um, just an incredible woman. And, so you have to go through the watching your partner go through such physical torment, which is excruciating in and of itself. Just chemo it's a blessing that we have it currently. I pray to God we continue to find better ways to cure cancer, but effectively you're killing everything to kill the bad thing. and um, and then obviously had 2 young daughters at that point. And so I think in the realm of um, looking back and having a super positive story, and my wife being very healthy at this point, I can look back at and subsequently, there was less than a 20% chance she could even have kids post chemo. In that November of 2015, we had decided we wanted to try for a third. And then, but she wanted to wait a few months, just timing. I think it was a friend's wedding. Um, so it ended up delaying that, and then finding out the next month she had cancer. We were so blessed. Uh, what was that, in early 28, or what was it, November? Yeah, so it had been early 2019. We reopened the chapter of trying to have another kid, and basically giving it a 3-month window based off some ongoing treatment she had to take. To see if we could even do it. And if not, we just didn't want cancer to take that away from us. And we got blessed with the twins. But I'd say I wasn't a great father pre-cancer. I put too much responsibility on being the provider. I put too much emphasis, I'd say, on being the provider to our family. My wife and I met in college, and we had always talked about when we had kids, we wanted her to be able to stay at home. Just we felt it was very important for our relationship and the way we wanted to raise our family. Um, but I fell into the trap that I think a lot of men fall into, that being the provider isn't your sole role, right? And so when she got sick and I had to help with her treatments and recovery, and had to raise my daughters and had to be the provider, I found myself just kind of pulled in three different directions that always felt like I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, no matter which positive thing I was doing. And that allowed me to clear out all the other stuff that wasn't important. It allowed me to just say, this is my foundation, this is my core, and all this other stuff is really noise. And where am I being effective with my time and helpful to my family? And so grew a lot through that experience, and my relationship with both my wife and my children grew a lot through that experience. So in that vein of true happiness, it took this feeling like everything was going to be taken away in order to actually appreciate what I had, and something that I look back on as the worst probably a year and a half of my life, while simultaneously it's the thing I'm happiest that it occurred, because of the result afterwards and how strong our family is as a result. So
What an amazing story, man. And I remember those days, and I'm happy that it's worked out. And not only did it work out, but two bonus kiddos.
it's a
Amazing.
bonus. And I get to tell the story of having a 12-year-old and 4-year-olds, and the big spectrum in between. And uh, a lot of those 8-year gaps between kids are because it's a different wife or whatever, and mine's in a whole different circumstance. And it's led to that appreciation that I have today for their age gaps and seeing their different phases in life. So
You gave me some hints at this, but what is the biggest takeaway for you in that overall experience? Like what's the thing in your back pocket now that couldn't possibly be there without going through all this?
yeah, I mean, I think it's the refocusing of priorities, drawing back to my principles in everything that is actually important to me. And again, just being a provider was one piece of that, but not the whole puzzle. Um, and the resolve, and I think it's just something that that'll never be taken away. And yeah, that appreciation for how quickly you can get a phone call and your whole life can change instantly. It makes you look at each day that you have some normalcy and say uh, it's a great day, and then you're going to hit some really rocky things, and that's just a part of life, and you'll get through it. So I think that, I don't know, if I were to sum it up, I think that lack of expectation for a normal day or a normal period of time has been totally eroded. So when things like you have twins and you're going to 4 kids in November of 19, then you go through a pandemic in March of 20 and get locked down, and your business is effectively going under, and you just kind of say, got 4 kids, business is tough, and we're going to figure it out. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, and there's no doubt in my mind that you will figure out whatever life throws at you, but at the same time, what a audacious experience to go through. And it was a forcing function that prompted deep clarity about what mattered to you. you know? And I just wonder, I know what matters to me, I think. You know what I mean? Like, well, yeah, but have I sat down and really gotten crystal clear proactively about how I want to design my world and, you know, I feel like there's a bit of us just winging it right now, you know, which is okay. It's working out
Yeah.
great. But what do we really, really want? Have we sat down and constructed that conversation and then had it and we not exactly. It's implied.
Mhm.
And then something big like that or COVID can come along and um, it'll crystallize for you what's
Yeah.
really important. But at the same time, I just wonder for all of us, can we be proactive in that exercise of determining who we are, what we want, how we want to build this one life to live?
Mhm.
Uh, do we need to wait around for, you know, shit to hit the fan?
No,
Not
no.
necessarily.
The self-work is, I don't think it's sitting down with your wife and mapping out, here's how much I care about you and this and that, right? It's that self-work of understanding your priorities. It's things like, small things, right? I used to play fantasy football. I realized how much time that was taking up and got rid of that, and you start, I have a saying that a number of people around me are tired of hearing, but I think in 10-year blocks and 2-hour increments.
Mm,
So I think about what do I want in 10 years? And then every 2 hours, I'm trying to reassess that I spend my time in the right place, or am I spending my time in the right place to get me to where I want to be in 10 years, the type of family I want to have, the type of relationships I want to have. And and it provides me a lot of clarity just to kind of constantly reassess, am I doing the right things? And so that's I think if you do that type of work and you know what you want things to look like in 10 years, and you check in with yourself fairly frequently and say, am I doing the right things? Like, am I telling my wife I love her? Am I showing her that I love her by contributing as a father? Am I showing my kids I love them by spending time with them um, and having conversations with them, even though I'm exhausted and tired of talking, but I'm gonna keep keep going at it with them just because this is where they're learning and where our relationship is rooted. Um, it helps you to get over your own desires in a way, or laziness, or whatever we want to call it, and try to put it in the right place. I mean, by no means perfect. There's many 2-hour stretches that lead into way too long stretches where I'm not as good as I should be in, but it's something that I at least recognize and say to myself, I'll do better. I'll do better tomorrow. So
I hear intentionality in all that, right? Just being intentional with our relationships, our time, our energy, and also being a little graceful or giving ourselves some grace to, you know, when it's not as perfect as it could be,
mhm.
supposedly.
Yeah.
So tell me that was, you know, that was an important part of your life to cover and a bit sobering, but also beautiful that it's where it's at right now. And I love hearing that. What's been the most fun you've had with your kids in say the last year? You know,
Mhm.
collectively, individually, what's the most fun you've had?
Yeah. Um, yeah, the twins going from 3 to 4 kind of describe that phase of, you go from doing everything for them to being able to do things with them. And this ski season was really special for us. I was finally got good enough at skiing at my own. When my older daughter decided she liked to ski, I started skiing at the same time. So um, uh, and I wasn't able to help her out in terms of training. And with my second daughter, I was a little better, and I get to ski with her all the time now and do some really challenging stuff. But with the twins, we were able to skip the lessons. I was able to get them up on the hill, able to kind of coach them through. Got them, my son, 2 months on skis and started going down some blues with me, by February. And just being able to see them all progress, being able to see them find their my older daughter finding her friendships. She's still very much a kid at 12, which is, you know, fantastic, very imaginative, and but not all kids at 12 are that way. But being able to find this kind of core group of friends around her that still like using their imagination and still like drawing and role playing and all those types of fun things, like it's just been great um, to see her be able to connect in her communities. And with my 10-year-old, you know, she really kind of grew a lot in sports this year, and finding her kind of competitive side, I think that was really special for me, because up until this year it kind of been, you know, she'd play sports and she liked doing it, but this was the first year it kind of clicked for her, like I want to win and I want to perform. And that was pretty awesome. And yeah, with the twins, it's just getting to do more and more stuff with them, take them to the driving range, and, you know, just have them have some different experiences. And, you know, when you get to this phase now where I'm at, and out of the newborn phase, and you finally get to have some hobbies again, but you get some buddies to do it with, and you get to kind of bring them into that fold. And you know, it's fun. It's just really enjoyable to be able to experience all this with them. And um, you know, see see how good or bad you are at sixth grade math, and and how well you can teach a sixth grader their math questions. You know, it's
Yeah, exactly. How
it's
funny is that, right?
yeah,
That's good. Yeah, just watching them grow up and unfurl into amazing human beings. It's got to
yeah.
bring a lot of joy to your life. I know it does.
That's that's what we were talking up front. But, you know, just remembering back to your phase right now about how special every, you know, new motor skill is, every new attempt at verbal communication, you know, all that type of stuff. You're like, okay, they're forming, they're starting to come together, you know, they're going to be able to do this. And it's a really special phase. uh, it's a lot of energy and a lot of, you know, just hovering over top of them, making sure they don't hurt themselves. And, you know, really selfless phase at that point, where you have to just be, you know, surrounding them and making sure you're taking care of them. And you know, it feels like it's going to be forever, but I can tell you with the 12-year-old, it goes by so fast. And, you know, she's doing a 2-night sleepover with her school right now, and gonna miss her for 2 days, and then she'll probably have some friend stuff to do for end of the year. And all of a sudden you're like, man, I didn't see this kid for, you know, I saw her one night out of a whole week, you know, or 2 nights out of a whole week. And so um, you know, I'd say you kind of constantly think about the end of childhood at 18, but the reality is around 12 they start spreading their wings and they're on the go a lot. And it happens a lot faster than you think. So
Hmm. Yeah. Well, how do you slow down time? When it's too late to slow down time and you finally realize it, how do you slow down time?
just you
Okay.
just know, you know, you gave it what you could
Yeah.
when you could. So
So I want you to maybe even close your eyes and envision this following question and how you might tackle your response here. But I want you to picture decades from now, all four of your kids are sitting around, say, a campfire together or out in the back patio, and they're older. They're like in their, let's say they're in their 70s. So maybe you're around, but you
I
might
like
not be.
them.
That's okay. They're telling tales of their father, reminiscing about all the wisdom, all the lessons, all the experiences. What are the three things Anthony is known for?
Uh, the truth fairy. I think again, kind of instilling that in them. Hopefully they laugh about it, and the awkward conversations we would have around it.
Dad
uh,
always spoke the truth. The Truth Fairy. What a great nickname. Oh, yeah.
um, I hope that I pray and I believe they'll know I love them. You know, with everything I had, and that um, they recognize, how special that is in the world. I constantly describe myself as a happy person because I realize how difficult the world is. And I appreciate the true friendships that I have and the successes that I have. I appreciate those things because I know they don't just come. And so um, I hope that that's a big part of who they are, that they recognize how special our investment in time and energy as a family together in the things that we do, the experiences we give them, um, the relationships we try to build between them. It's easy for a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old to bicker a lot. I talk to them both a lot about don't don't make the argument mistake of always, and you always do this and you always do that, because those are things that can end relationships. Focus on the issue at hand and continue to work on your relationship, because it's going to be super important as you get older that no one's going to love you like your sibling. No one's going to care about you like your sibling. And so I hope that they sit around that campfire and they're laughing and smiling and fully appreciative and recognizing that the truth fairy was telling them the truth on that.
So truthful, joyful. What's the third one? Maybe I missed the actual third one. If there is
Yeah. Say adventurous. I'd like to push them, to experience things they don't want to necessarily experience up front. And I hope they look at that fondly in the future. So
good stuff, my man.
yeah.
Adventureful, adventurous.
Adventurous. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, absolute pleasure talking with you, seeing you,
Thank you,
and
Dan.
fun to explore the ultimate role with you. You've seen a lot, you've been through a lot, you've accomplished a lot, and to hear your story, even though I know you, it's just such a treat to hear this particular vantage on life. So, thanks for making time.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, absolutely, man. We'll see you on the next one.
All right,
Okay.
bye. See ya.
Later. There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now. Whoa.